Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment today we are going to talk about the biggest news in a while from the perspective of IAS and PCS exams, that is the fall and capture of Kabul in Afghanistan, and the president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, has fled. This topic is extremely important from the perspective of mains examination, also from the perspective of prelims. So let's begin. Now, I would like to suggest you to be very attentive because we are going to discuss a lot. It's a lot to take in as information, but this entire segment will be worth your time. I promise that. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss step by step. Let's move on and talk about the situation in Afghanistan. As the news started to come yesterday that Taliban entered the outskirts of Kabul, but there were assurances by the spokesperson of Taliban that the capture of city will not take place. They will not enter Kabul, but nothing of that sort happened. They actually started entering the streets of Kabul by greeting and meeting people in their own vehicles. So this was the scenario. This was the scenario when people started to panic. And they took Kabul effortlessly. No shooting, no firing at the first instances, but now the security has deteriorated in Afghanistan and in Kabul. So the situation right now, mass exodus is there, panic and uncertainty is there. People are becoming depressed. So many videos have come to the fore via Twitter and other social media platforms that people are trying to scramble for their lives. Why not? Because the president and the ministers, the government itself, it fled. Why not then? So what started as a war way back in 2001 gave birth to the 20 years of stalemate. Nothing could be more preposterous for any power such as the US if we talk about the current scenario. Let's move on and talk about the beginning of Taliban. The Taliban came into the being in the year 1990s, and this is a picture of Mullah Omar, who is a founder and a former leader of the Taliban. When they started a war against the Soviet Union from the northern provinces of Pakistan, and after that they gained popularity in Afghanistan, they came to the fore and started to build their own government with the help of Sharia law in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, since the year 1996 to 2001, they had their own law. The human rights were degraded. Even there was a degradation of women's rights. Their judicial system was pretty rigorous and medieval in nature, and that is why the only problem is that regimes change everywhere. But this regime changed, and this regime changed. The power was transferred to a more radical militant terror outfit. So that is why people are worried. In our country as well, regimes do change, but it goes through a peaceful process of elections. People don't just leave their homes and move on to another countries. This is the entire problem, that the women, the human beings there, the citizens of Afghanistan don't want to go back to the Taliban era. That is the entire problem. And of course, why not? Because they have resorted to all sorts of violence in order to come back to power. After 20 years, they are going to be back into the power. So the Taliban, founded by, it's a militant group which used to actually fight against Soviet Union, and now has actually ran a parallel government after that, and also tried to take back the power through violent means, and now is running a country such as Afghanistan. So this militia, it was a handful of militia. It wasn't the current scenario suggests that there are 85,000 recruits of Taliban. But this outfit was not this large 20 years back, right? In 2001, we found that there were just a handful of Taliban recruits. But now, as we can see, by the support and duplicity of Pakistan, this group has gotten into gargantuan structure, and the Afghan army is twice as large as the Taliban. Taliban are 85,000 recruits, but the Afghan army did not even fire a shot. Moving on, if we talk about the structure of Taliban, the structure of Taliban is not at all organized. They might have certain ranks, they might have certain official posts, but as you can see, the spokesperson himself said that no, we are not going to enter Kabul. But as the Taliban itself is composed of many subgroups, they do not have one proper common goal for their own country. So that is why there was not a proper structure of information, and the Taliban started entering the premises of Kabul, and then mass exodus started taking place. The embassies were shut down, and of course, whatever is there is coming now and forth again. So we will try to keep up with that. Moving on, if we talk about the 1998 planning was there. The year 1998 saw the starting of the plan to actually strike on America by Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden came from a good financial structured house, and he was also an engineer, but how he came into Taliban is another story. He was quite supported at first by these superpowers, actually. But later he struck onto America, and who can forget this attack, 9/11 of 2001. It was a good day, a bright day, to start your work on 11th of September 2001, when the day was seemingly normal. Certain planes, 4 to 5 planes, were hijacked, and 2 planes, one from south and one from north, struck the World Trade Center. When India time and again started talking about terrorism with the then President George Bush of America, they did not pay heed to the growing terrorism in Asia, in Central Asia. When this striking, and this is the biggest ever terror attack on the US, because it is not a child's play to attack the world's superpower. But it did happen, and then George Bush did say that the Taliban are going to pay back. They are going to ruin the entire underground network of Taliban so that new recruits can't happen, new recruitment can't happen. But now, as we see, a handful of terrorists, a handful of militant group has become such a gigantic terror organization. And as I talked about Osama bin Laden, here I am presenting a picture of him. Although they killed Osama bin Laden in 2011, but yet the group is still there, and there will be many more bin Ladens to come. Moving on, if we talk about the war, the waging of war, why did it happen? The World Trade Center was attacked, the Pentagon was attacked, and there was also plans to attack Washington, D.C. But that couldn't take place because of the bravery of the passengers of the plane. That is another story. We will not get into the depths of that. But if we talk about the waging of the war in Afghanistan, this is because of the same reason, that the Talibanis, they had given refuge to Osama bin Laden after George W. Bush, the American regime, talked to them to hand Osama bin Laden to them. They did not agree, and then US declared war. US and their allies declared war on Afghanistan. And after 20 years of waging of war, they did succeed into pushing Taliban into a small group in Quetta and Peshawar. From there only they started launching attacks on the allies and the government in Afghanistan. So during this entire process, an interim government was also put in place with Hamid Karzai as its leader. And that leader, that group or the elected regime, the interim regime, not elected regime, at least the democracy on paper, Afghanistan, started bearing the brunt of the entire war. And as we talk about the stalemate, after so many years, in 2018, it was seen that there is a stalemate in the war in Afghanistan. Nothing, any sort of achievement was there for the US. And moving on to this very important peace deal, the US-Taliban peace deal, which actually through this, the US embraced Taliban as a legitimate outfit. So here they actually had deals on prisoner swap, in which the US promised the Taliban to swap the prisoners of Taliban through their prisoners of US. And of course, that was a one-sided deal. The Taliban elected government was not into the picture at all. There was also some commitments by Taliban that they would not let the other militant outfits to use the soil of Afghanistan to launch attacks on the US and its allies. Also, it demanded that sanctions should be removed on the Taliban group, on the group of Taliban, the people of Taliban, by the US and UN. The biggest feature of this deal was the withdrawal of troops. This was started in the Donald Trump era, where it was promised that the troops will be withdrawn simultaneously along with all these procedures, and also the troops withdrawal has been there since the past few years now. Joe Biden did come into the picture, and he promised that even though there was constant capture of one region to another, the important cities were falling into the hands of Taliban. Yet, Joe Biden administration said that they will pull out the troops in by September 2021. But now, as we can see, it is much before that, right? The embassy started, the US government started sending helicopters to evacuate its personnel and diplomats from the embassy. They also said that we need to burn our papers. When the smoke was actually observed from the embassy, it was coming from the embassy, because they had been given this directive to burn all the papers, the important papers, if they, God forbid, if they fall into the hands of Taliban. So this was the entire scenario. And as you can see, from 9th of July to 15th of August, the red area is actually into the hands of Taliban. How their proliferation into the entire region in just this amount of time was never ever predicted. 6 months of time were given. Even Ashraf Ghani, the president of Afghanistan, did say that we can have a power sharing agreement, but they were not listening to him. And as you can see, this spread so quickly. Important cities like Jalalabad fell, and after that Kandahar, Herat, but now Kabul also fell. And the gunmen of Taliban, as you can see, they entered into the premises of Presidential Palace. And that is the biggest symbol of the defeat of the government. And the president has said, Ashraf Ghani, president of Afghanistan, has said, if we did not flee, and if the ministers haven't fled, if they hadn't fled, then there would be more bloodshed, because they took Kabul very effortlessly. The people started panicking, and they started moving towards, here is the landing of the helicopter. One more thing that I would like to tell you, you must be witnessing certain sort of pictures coming into the fore, and two similar pictures, almost similar pictures were there of the evacuation in Vietnam from the US embassy, and in here also, Afghanistan also. That is the War of Saigon. It is being compared, this situation is being compared with the War of Saigon. Saigon, this war started in 1954 actually, okay? And it continued till 1975. So, a huge amount of time, a war in Vietnam, when the South Vietnam was under the control of the US and the North Vietnam was under the control of Communist Party. So after the fall of South Vietnam, this picture, which you must be seeing if you are paying attention, that these two pictures are being likened. Okay, so Johnson B. Lyndon was the president, Johnson B. Lyndon, JBL. Okay, so when he was the president, he was not a very popular president when it came to War of Saigon, because in his own country there were certain slogans such as hey JBL, how many children have you killed today, some sort of that. But then back then the Indira Gandhi government did support the falling of the South Vietnam, because she did say she had her own thought process when it came to that, because she said that if unrepresentative governments are not supported at some place, they should not indulge into proxy wars. And she did also say that when she went to meet the president, she did say that she is not going to have any sort of conversation in which it was there that they shared the same agony. Indira Gandhi the former Prime Minister and the President of the US, she was not going to say anything. Even as her advisor said that, you must say, ma'am, that India and US are sharing the same agony. She did say that we understand your agony, Mr. President. So that was a different time. And as you can see, the current situation in Afghanistan is way worse. It's way worse than it was in 20 years back, because Taliban has grown into a huge outfit now. If we talk about the entire scenario, the falling of the Kabul, people started panicking, mass exodus started taking place, and this is the picture of how helpless the people of Kabul are. They ran as soon as they got to know about the capture of Kabul. They started applying, going to the offices to apply for visa with their help of their ID cards if they ever served for the military of the US as cooks, as guards, or as anything. So this is the sheer helplessness in Kabul. Then Afghan lawmakers are actually starting to look towards certain countries, peaceful countries such as India, for providing them refuge. And plans are afoot by India for providing them a refuge. Certain other countries are also doing so. And as we can see, the principal advisor on health has also arrived in India along with certain ministers. He did say that where is the president? They do not know. But according to certain reports, the president is in Tajikistan. The president, Ashraf Ghani. Moving on, if we talk about the shutting of the embassy of India in Afghanistan, India had 4 very important embassies. Jalalabad, which was temporarily shut. Then we had an embassy at Herat, that was also shut. In Kandahar, that was also shut, and now Kabul is also being shut. So, of course, every country is trying to close down their embassy. The structure is such that we do not know what future holds for Afghanistan. Now, women's rights. Such instances have taken place against women by Taliban. We cannot even fathom to exist in a country like this. Women they should always wear a veil. They should never go out of the house unescorted by a man. They should not wear certain slippers which could show the skin of the legs, of the feet. And a woman of 21 years of age was shot down because she was not wearing a veil. There was also an instance where a school principal, she actually warned her own teachers to go back to their homes because she knew that they were not safe in school, as the Taliban don't want their women to work. They have called out for the women who are working in banks and schools and various other government departments to give up their jobs, and the husbands can take the jobs, or any man from their homes can take the jobs. You can see the amount, and they are promising, the Talibanis, they are promising that the future is glorious for the people of Afghanistan. Moving on, if we talk about the women who have arrived in India, certain footages have occurred in which women are saying that I can't even believe, I'm quoting, I can't even believe that the world has abandoned Afghanistan. They will kill everyone. The history is such. Moving on, as you can see, India surrounded by a nuisance and a bully. Pakistan, a perpetual bully. And then Pakistan actually is a perpetual nuisance, always creating some sort of nuisance. And then we have, of course, China, a constant bully, not only to India, but to everybody, every nation that has a border with it. They have come across as supporters of Taliban. China has said that they are looking for friendly relations with Taliban, and Pakistan has endorsed the emergence of Taliban and the structuring of Taliban in Afghanistan. They have actually said that Taliban is actually the legitimate government. So as you can see, if there is a nexus between Taliban, Pakistan and China, then what will happen for India? India will have security concerns from its own neighbors. Can you imagine the security situation in India, for India in the future? And it's not even a question if that must happen. It is happening right now. The question is when, till when we have to be in this constant fear. So let's move forward and talk about the impacts. The impacts are very clear, extremely clear. The duplicity of Pakistan has, for the very own reason, has made America lose its war in Afghanistan. Why? Because in the parliament as well, many spokespersons have supported Taliban. They have actually proved to be of great financial aid from Pakistan. They have provided recruits to Taliban, Pakistan has provided recruits to Taliban. Sanctuaries were built in Pakistan to actually have a nest for Taliban. So you can imagine this will actually embolden other militant groups such as Lashkar-e-Toiba. Although Taliban has committed that they will not let its grounds, its soil, the soil of Afghanistan to be used against America and its allies. But as we can see, we also talked about how it was promised that Kabul will not be taken by force, but it happened. And it will embolden other militant groups. They will see that violence is a legitimate means to acquire power. Then there is a dent on the superpowers' goodwill. We have US with such a huge military, but nothing could be done. And I don't think, and we also, I am not saying that I don't think, but many analysts have believed that now US cannot do anything, as Joe Biden administration has time and again said that he doesn't want to talk about Afghanistan. He wants to talk about happy things. And he also said that other regional powers should take care of Afghanistan now to clean its mess. The mess which was created by America should be cleaned by the regional powers. And although the US did try a lot to have its own quadrilateral, many talks, peace negotiations were also there. But in the end, everything was a mess. Then there is also destabilization and in trade and domestic politics as well. Trade is very important with Central Asia for India, for its energy security. Now Afghanistan, whoever will control Afghanistan will control the land and the transit of the entire area. How can we forget about Chabahar Port, the Chabahar project, the trilateral agreement between India, Iran and Afghanistan. Then political structure. The political structure is already very messed up in Iran, now in Afghanistan. Pakistan, we all know that it's a military regime there. We all know that the domestic politics of US will now be actually dominated by the Joe Biden administration's exit in Afghanistan. Donald Trump has already called for Joe Biden's resignation. Then we have trade and investment. I have already talked about the importance of it. Increasing terrorism. When one outfit can capture a country which was tormented by war for years by the US, why not other small militant groups? They have now aspirations. They will look up to Taliban, right? And human rights, collapse of the world order. If big superpowers, they can abandon a country like Afghanistan, what is the message that has been sent? Is the UN, United Nations, where it could take a stand, it did not. It should have. India always called out for Afghan-owned, Afghan-led transformation, but it did not actually happen. The Taliban, 85% of the population in Afghanistan does not want to be ruled by Taliban. Then, of course, collapse of the world order we have discussed, and human rights. We have already talked about how thieves we haven't talked about, but I would like to tell you that any thief, if was caught by the Taliban, his hands or her hands were chopped off. 225 women in 1996, they were actually given certain punishments for being unveiled or not following the dress code of Taliban. So these are the certain instances. Their punishment system is also very medieval. Moving on, if we talk about the challenges, the history of Taliban with India is very bitter. The hijack of 1999 and asking the government of India, not asking the government of India to free its prisoners, including, of course, Masood Azhar of Jaish-e-Mohammed. And after that, he went on to attack India the parliamentary attack in 2001 by Masood Azhar, the Pathankot attack of 2016, the Pulwama attack of 2019. So all that. Second, after the striking and after the attack on the World Trade Center by the Taliban, India did have a very strong stance against Taliban. So they know that India is not with us. Although India went to talk to Taliban few weeks back, but it was quite unofficial. After that also, if we talk about the entire history of Taliban with India, has always remained bitter, and India never actually acknowledged Taliban as a legitimate power, even in the time of 2020 to 25 years back. So, second is that there is no power sharing agreement. As the ministers have fled, whom to now talk to for power sharing? Maybe we can have a little glimmer of hope that maybe in order to avoid bloodshed, they did, because yes, violence has come down when Kabul fell after a certain point of time, but still we can have a glimmer of hope. Maybe a little bit more negotiations can help, although it's very small. Refugee crises, how to have a proper structural plan for letting in refugees, how we will support them throughout, that is another thing. And because of that, certain terror attacks could also be something to be something to be worried about for India. And then domestic politics. Of course, any such thing will be politicized, not only in India, but many other countries. Moving on, if we talk about way forward, however little the hope is, we should always try to be positive. Okay, so controlling the chaos, the first thing is there is a need to control the chaos there. But whom to look to? Because all the government officials have fled. They have left all hope. Who will actually try to control the chaos? All the countries should try to do that. The regional powers, as well as the US, Russia, everybody should come together and try to talk to Taliban in order to control the chaos. Rope Taliban in by the world powers, that's the same thing. Constant support to refugees, because right now in the short term, that is only the thing that we can do. Plans to be afoot and their sustenance should be assured. And United Nations should at least try to assure that human rights are not degraded. Also, if we talk about the constant support to refugee and their sustenance, India has done so much investment in Taliban, Afghanistan. Many major projects, 400, 500 projects every now and then, at least 500 major projects have been done. $3 billion of investment. Many projects were taken over by Taliban. So sustenance is something that is needed not only from the part of India, but on the part of other countries as well. Let's see what happens. And moving on to the main question, we have to critically analyze the state of affairs in Afghanistan and its impact on the regional politics. Okay, so that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.